Hey, Tom Seymour here with another $500 feature coming off the heels of some pretty awesome news. New York Times just gave positive reviews to VHS Massacre and VHS Massacre 2. I'm going to be talking about those films down the road, but this week I'm talking about a film originally called Tchotchke Thieves. I'm just going to show some excerpts and talk about just specific scenes in regard to production. So this was a successful film. It was in all the Blockbuster videos at the time. It was in Walmart as DVDs, and then it did go on streaming, Amazon Prime, and places like that.
There once was a band of thieves.
The opening narration, you actually hear Clint Howard's voice, because Clint Howard, I actually hired Clint Howard to do the voiceover narration. It was pretty interesting. I had to fly out to California to do it. He was a reasonable human being. He's a working actor, and he is hireable if you're doing independent film. I had an established record because Atlanta College Prophets had been out in all the video stores, so people at least knew what that was. We got Russ Russo and Maggie Champagne. Maggie Champagne, of course, was in the Amy Schumer show and has done a bunch of other stuff. It's basically about backyard thieves. And this is a concept that I keep kind of going back to. I think, living in suburbia, it was about optimizing what you have. I talked about this in the last video as well a little bit, but if you live in a suburban house, is not that interesting. But if you have characters that are thieves breaking into a house that's not theirs, then it becomes interesting. But this is funny because it is kind of low stakes. These are they consider themselves polite thieves who only steal from people's backyards and porches because they feel that stuff is left out, that it's fair game. So they have this ridiculous code of ethics. We knew we had to shoot fast doing these kind of scenes, so I was deliberately using handheld camera work. It was an HD Canon camera, and so I think it still holds up pretty well. Obviously, the digital cameras, the contrast ratio is not that great, and you will see as the film goes on. Like, the reason that looks good is because it was cloudy out, so that gives a diffusion of light, and so everything looks really good. This is sunny weather, so of course the sky blows out. It's totally blown out because digital cameras typically cannot handle skies like that. Nowadays, the contrast ratio is way better. You may be able to shoot out in the daylight like this without a canopy and still have it look okay in the background. Like, maybe that would be grayer, but now it's kind of blown out and white. Now, you'll see films like this. Soderbergh plays a lot with this, blown out backgrounds and stuff like that, if you look at some of his films. But a lot of this stuff is handheld, but we did have a jib, and we had other various pieces of equipment to try to make the film look more elaborate. So this is Sherry Lynn. She acted in a lot of our films back in the day. Really funny performer. And then, of course, this is Chris Ferry playing Karate Stan. He was in that Story Pirates troupe that Jon Stewart used to talk about all the time. And he's acted in a number of films that went to Sundance. If you're interested more about Chris Ferry, if you look at my YouTube channel, there's a good interview with him about going to Sundance and what that experience was like. And it's good. It kind of pulls the curtain back on the sort of process of how one might get to Sundance and what that experience is like. So most of this was shot around Central Connecticut, just in locations that would let us shoot. This was back before everyone was really obsessed with shooting video on their phones and stuff like that. It was more primitive. So, if you came in there wanting to shoot, people weren't sort of exhausted by everyone shooting video all the time. So sometimes they thought it was kind of cool. This is that jib. A lot of the scenes, which are supposed to be sort of bureaucratic interiors, like maybe this works, maybe it doesn't work for you. But there's a lot of playing with interiors. So you show an establishing shot of a government building in downtown Waterbury, Connecticut, and then the interior looks like this. This is just like a oversized closet. So so you can decide whether it works or not. It does look like an office area. but that was just dressed up. But we did the best we could. You know, even the props. It's like it's old Chinese food. Probably a phone without a cord on it. But Dick Bowen, I think, is just a hilarious actor, as well as, you know, Phil Garrett and Matt Ford and all the rest of the guys, John Gorman. You know, shooting the film, it was very difficult, but this was, you'd refer to it as a comedy adventure. Distribution companies would want to refer to a comedy more as an adventure. And that's probably still true to this day. If you labeled something an adventure, people are more likely to watch it or look at it. Comedy is tough. You got to be in the mood for comedy, and then also a bad comedy is really unwatchable. Whereas like a bad adventure, that's a little easier. You know, a bad drama, unwatchable. A bad horror movie, actually a bad horror movie is just fine, you know. It's one of the most forgiving genres. This is Guy. He's an actor as well. A very cool dude. So a lot of this stuff has to do with, you know, this character Billy being a backyard thief and his run-ins with the mayor and stuff like that. This was my brother's house, his old house, his backyard. And so we're using a lot of different locations. We got permission to shoot in this house. One of my first feature films, Thrill Kill Jack, which was not very good. It was a VHS movie. 80-minute VHS movie, not very good. Okay, so we got permission to shoot in front of this building because it looks like a cool mayor's mansion. It just looks awesome. So you see these clowns in the beginning. I'm gonna rewind back a little bit. Let's go back. This shot, we see these two clowns as we wheel around here. We see them there, and you'll see them again. And we cut back to this house. We see these two clowns. So this was an attempt to marry two locations together. So the idea is that this mayor has a carnival in his backyard that he's building. Like, that's his form of corruption. He's using his money to buy coke and build a carnival in his backyard. And so, like, you know, it's like just playing upon political corruption in a really comic way. So when we're at this shot, I'm going to pause it for a second. We moved location, so now we're in the back of a real, I think the place was called Wild Bill's, and they sold fireworks, and it was kind of like a year-round haunted house type of thing, you know. So anyway, that was our solution to marry the two locations to get together, and you'll see it a little better as the movie goes on. But you know, here, you know, the clowns are there, and then they're here behind Dick's head, and so we're also cutting on action. I'm pulling the barbecue, it's moving, and then we're cutting, it's still moving, and then we're through the clown gate, I'll call it. So now we're on to the secondary location, and it marries the two sets together. So obviously, I don't know if the average person will be like, wow, these guys had a big budget because they built all this crap in the back of a mansion. Maybe they'll think that, maybe they won't. Maybe people know these kind of tricks now. But we thought it was pretty slick because we wanted to show a beautiful sort of old mayor's mansion with a carnival in the backyard. And that's the solution we came up with, is through using cutting on action and then having some props that carry over to the next set. When we switch angles, it just looks like part of the same set. It's really fast, so you probably really don't really notice. Like, he throws a hot dog at him, he's pissed off, he starts running, we're cutting, and we're running by, and it's going, they're both moving left, and then we cut, and they're moving left. And so you really don't even notice it, but those locations are two separate sets that are 20-minute drive away. So, and this is another thief scene. Again, the colors look really good. It pops, partly because I believe it was a slightly overcast day. And here we get Karate Stan, played by Chris Ferry, coming out and trying to get the bike back. Looks like I stole the bike from this little girl, and he's gonna beat me up. It was fun playing with still frames when he kicks. I had a still frame and the outlandish sound effects. There's a certain freedom into doing like a wacky comedy because you really can kind of just go all out with it, like outlandish sound effects and, you know, silliness. Chris Ferry, it's like, you know, just Phil with gum all over his face, and it can be very freeing to do a comedy like that. Okay, so here's something. He's coming through the front door. Did you really care about what the front door looked like, or did you notice? Because, so we're going to go back. So I skip around here. We're at the mansion location. We're seeing Phil's face, and then you kind of see the door. Matt Ford's kind of blocking it because it's a big double door. It's different than the one my character enters. But they're talking, and in a way they're distracting the audience from seeing really exactly what the front door is. So we cut to it, and that's a single door, but no one really cares, you know. So that's a way again of like fooling the interior. And this is a nice suburban house, but it's and there's drugs everywhere, just showing that the henchman and the mayor are all, you know, messed up. And I love this Chris Ferry's face, just just pondering something off camera, you know. Again, this scene, you know, with the foliage in the background, I always thought this looked very pretty. And you know, I remember this day. We were both really exhausted, and I think the cinematographer had to go home because is it Mike Anderson, I believe he was shooting. He shot probably 80-90% of the film, but we needed the shot, so I think it was Kate Gorman holding the boom mic and actually panning the camera in one instance. So there were times where we just had to shoot really late, and some people just couldn't stay because they had jobs, and, you know, again, this was people who just were doing this, you know. This character, Volgo, he's this Russian guy, and he lives in his car, and I always thought that was a cool theme.